Bonjour, merci de nous rejoindre en direct sur EBS pour notre point de presse quotidien. Nous sommes le mardi 23 juin, nous avons quelques annonces à vous faire. First, let me share with you the agenda of tomorrow's college meeting. As President von der Leyen announced in the European Parliament last week, the college will have a debate on racism. As the President said, we need to talk about racism and we need to act. It is always possible to change direction if there is a will to do so. This is what this debate will be all about. While we don't need to start from scratch and have a strong EU legal framework in place, we are aware that inequalities persist and that we need collectively to work harder, and this is what you will be discussing tomorrow with members of the college. Then the college will adopt the evaluation report on the EU rules on data protection 2 years after the entry into application of the GDPR. This will be the occasion to look at how the application of the GDPR in the EU works after 2 years and discuss the state of play of personal data protection in the digital age. The college will also adopt a communication assessing the alignment of a number of EU legal acts with data protection rules. And finally, the college will also adopt the first ever EU strategy on victims' rights. The aim of the strategy is to ensure that all victims of crime can fully rely on their rights, no matter in the EU, where in the EU the crime took place. Last but not least, tomorrow the Commission will present its draft budget for 2021. Together with Next Generation EU, it will mobilize significant investments in 2021 to address the consequences of the crisis and drive our recovery forward. A readout and press conference by Vice President Vera Jourova and Commissioner Reinders will take place after the college meeting. I now call Sonia for news on how the EU performs in terms of innovation.
Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Les performances de l'Union européenne en matière d'innovation s'améliorent. C'est ce qui ressort du tableau du bord européen de l'innovation 2020 publié aujourd'hui par la Commission. L'Union européenne surpasse les États-Unis pour la deuxième année. Cependant, il reste encore plus à faire pour rattraper les leaders mondiaux de l'innovation comme la Corée du Sud, le Japon et l'Australie. Les résultats qui couvrent les données de 2019 mettent en évidence les possibilités de meilleure coordination des politiques d'innovation de l'Union européenne. Aide l'Europe à améliorer sa compétitivité au niveau mondial et renforce le rôle clé de l'innovation dans la lutte contre le coronavirus. La recherche et l'innovation sont des éléments essentiels de la réponse coordonnée de l'Union européenne à la crise du coronavirus. Ils feront partie intégrante d'une réponse durable et inclusive. Mesurer la performance de l'innovation est un élément clé pour atteindre cet objectif. Pour plus de détails sur les principaux résultats, veuillez consulter notre communiqué de presse publié aujourd'hui.
Merci Sonia. J'appelle maintenant Dan pour une annonce sur une conférence sur la finance digitale qui s'ouvre aujourd'hui.
Thanks, Eric. Today, the European Commission is hosting the closing conference of the 2020 Digital Finance Outreach event here in Brussels. It is the end of a series of 19 national events on fintech and digital finance that have been organised together with member states since February this year. Over 2,000 people have taken part in these events. They provided an opportunity to gather views of key stakeholders in digital finance from across the EU. They have also helped to create awareness about the Commission's ongoing and forthcoming work on digital finance. The conference will start at 2 o'clock today, Brussels time, with a keynote speech by Executive Vice President Valdis Dombrovskis. His speech will be live streamed and there will be a panel discussion afterwards. A full press release is available online.
Merci Dan. Je finis comme d'habitude avec les vidéoconférences du jour. Aujourd'hui, les ministres de l'Environnement se réunissent pour discuter des politiques environnementales et climatiques européennes et leur rôle dans la sortie de la crise et, à plus long terme, dans la reconstruction d'une économie moins intensive en carbone et plus respectueuse de l'environnement. La Commission sera représentée par le vice-président exécutif Frans Timmermans et le commissaire Virginijus Sinkevičius. Une conférence de presse aura lieu à 13h avec le commissaire Sinkevičius. Puis, cet après-midi, la commissaire Maria Gabriel participera à la 4e vidéoconférence des ministres de l'Union européenne chargés de l'éducation. La discussion portera sur les leçons de la mise en œuvre de l'apprentissage et de l'enseignement en ligne pendant la crise. Les ministres discuteront également des approches possibles pour la préparation de la prochaine année scolaire et la réouverture des écoles après l'été. Une conférence de presse aura lieu à la fin de la réunion, vers 18h, avec la commissaire Maria Gabriel sur ce sujet qui nous intéresse tous énormément, aussi d'un point de vue très pratique. Enfin, la présidente von der Leyen participera cet après-midi au sommet social tripartite par vidéoconférence. Le sommet se concentrera sur la contribution des partenaires sociaux, associations patronales et syndicats, à la relance économique et à l'emploi après la crise. Les partenaires sociaux discuteront le plan de relance proposé par la Commission. Ils présenteront aussi l'accord autonome sur la numérisation qu'ils ont récemment conclu, qui vise à assurer l'intégration réussie des technologies numériques sur le lieu de travail et l'investissement dans les compétences numériques. Le vice-président exécutif de la Commission, M. Valdis Dombrovskis, et le commissaire Nicolas Schmit participeront également au sommet. Voilà, ceci conclut nos annonces pour aujourd'hui. Nous pouvons passer à vos questions. Et je passe la parole dans un premier temps à Dujan.
Yes, hello, Dusan Gajic, Radio Television of Serbia. I hope you can hear me well. I guess my question would go for Peter, because I would like to know about the announcements made by both political leaders in Belgrade and Pristina. President Vučić, after meeting Mr. Lajčák, has said that he would come to Brussels end of this week. We heard the same from Prime Minister Hoti in Pristina. So is there going to be a meeting in the framework of resumed dialogue? If not, can you confirm whom they are going to meet here in Brussels? Mr. Borrell, perhaps? And lastly, about the new dialogue, Mr. Lajčák yesterday in Belgrade didn't speak about possible dates for resuming dialogue. So when can that be expected? Thank you.
Peter.
Thank you, Dusan. A lot of questions. You know that the EU is committed to continue its full engagement in working towards the resumption of the dialogue. And the best expression of this was the appointment and nomination of the EU Special Representative Miroslav Lajčák, who was indeed last week in Pristina having talks there, and yesterday and today in Serbia having talks there. And as a result of his contacts and his activities, we were able to announce that the dialogue should be resumed in July next month. The concrete date is being still worked on, and it will be announced and specified in due time. Both parties agreed to the resumption of the dialogue, so this July date or time frame is now on the table, and we are working towards making it happen. It will not happen this week. There have been various speculations and pieces of information suggesting that the representatives from both sides would be meeting this week in Brussels. That's not the case. However, they will visit Brussels towards the end of the week on their individual visits. But this is best to confirm with the respective offices, meaning Office of the Prime Minister Hoti and Office of the President Vučić, because it's their visits. I mean, we don't have the habit of announcing visits of partners coming to Brussels. I can confirm that we are working on meetings, and again, this is something in progress, and we will announce the details once the plans are completed. So I think, so you were asking about the dates, the meetings, and what's going to happen this week in Brussels. So I hope I answered all your questions.
Thank you, Peter. So let us continue on the issue of foreign affairs. If there are questions on this issue, so please only keep your hand raised if you have a question on this. I see that Richard Walker has a question. Richard.
Thank you very much, Eric. I hope you can hear me. My question is actually, it is foreign affairs, but it's a follow-up from the comments from President von der Leyen on China and Hong Kong yesterday. If you would like to take that question later, I'm happy to.
No, go ahead. I think that
Okay,
our relations with China are foreign relations questions, so you're
exactly.
spot
no,
on.
I just wondered if you wanted to. I wanted to, in case you wanted to keep talking about Serbia. So, yeah, I would just like some clarification because there were only 3 questions taken yesterday and there wasn't an opportunity to follow up then. So I just want to pick up on something that the president said in the Q&A at the end of the press conference. And I quote, he said, "This high degree of autonomy has allowed Hong Kong to flourish and to be so successful. So we also conveyed to China that China risks very negative consequences if it goes forward with imposing this law. The European Union is in touch with our G7 partners on this topic, and we have made our position very clear." So I just wanted to ask for clarification on exactly what we're to understand from that. Does the president mean that there will be negative consequences for China because the loss of autonomy will weaken Hong Kong, the autonomy having been the source of its flourishing and being successful? Or does it mean that the European Union is prepared to impose negative consequences on China if this law is imposed?
Thank you. So I will pass the floor to Virginie on this point. Virginie.
Hello. I hope things works.
Go ahead.
Okay. So indeed, yesterday took place the summit between the European Union and China, and it was obviously an opportunity to reiterate the EU's grave concerns at steps that were taken by China to impose a national security legislation from Beijing. We have said it many times. We consider that these steps are not in conformity with the Hong Kong Basic Law and with China international commitment. So we also consider that it put pressure on the fundamental rights and freedoms of the population protected by the law and the independent justice system. So this was a reiteration of a very well-known position. We have several declaration in that sense, and so it's basically a reiteration at the highest level this time of opposition on this matter.
Thank you. Follow up, Richard. You need to press the speak button.
Thank you. I understand, of course, that this is very sensitive and difficult territory, but with the greatest respect, that did not answer the question. My question was really specific about what was meant about negative consequences. Will those negative consequences simply flow from the fact that China is threatening to undermine autonomy that is crucial to Hong Kong's success? Or is the European Union prepared to impose negative consequences on China if this law comes into effect? Thank you.
I would refer you to the comments that I believe made on the issue, pointing out the fact that Hong Kong was a recipient of a very significant chunk of EU investment in China and flowing through Hong Kong to the rest of China. And therefore that Hong Kong was important both for China and for the European Union. And for the rest, the position is the one that has been expressed, as Virginie has said, time and time again. We are working with our G7 partners. It is in that context that the discussion is taking place on the impact of the Chinese actions or possible Chinese actions with regards to Hong Kong. Let us now move on, still I think on foreign relations, to Odile.
Oui, bonjour. Vous m'entendez?
Tout à fait. Vas-y.
Ah, très bien, oui. Oui, toujours sur la Chine. Bon, j'ai suivi la conférence de presse hier. J'ai peut-être pas tout entendu, mais je voulais savoir si il a été question dans les débats justement de les relations entre la Chine et l'Afrique et dans ce contexte du sommet. Merci.
Pour ta question, Odile, les relations entre, ou plutôt la situation particulière de l'Afrique et le rôle et les responsabilités qu'ont des acteurs internationaux majeurs comme l'Union européenne et la Chine par rapport à l'Afrique, notamment dans le contexte de la lutte contre les conséquences de la crise du coronavirus, ont effectivement été évoqués pendant le sommet. Voilà, je passe maintenant à Jérôme Hughes. Ou Jérôme Hugues plutôt. Pardon. Jérôme. Il faut pousser sur le bouton Speak. Ça ne semble pas fonctionner. Si. We cannot hear you. On ne peut pas t'entendre, Jérôme. On a l'image, mais pas le son. Une image hautement symbolique. No sound. Go ahead.
You can hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry about that. It's just to follow up on the EU-China summit. I mean, yesterday, I know it wasn't a European Commission event per se, it was a council event, but obviously Ursula von der Leyen was a key component to it. And it was mentioned earlier, it was referred to a little bit in terms of the Q&A session afterwards. I mean, we had 2 presidents and we only had 11 minutes of questions, only from 3 journalists. Now, obviously at these events, not everyone, you have dozens of journalists lined up to ask questions, and not everyone, it's just not practical for everybody to get a question. But, you know, when you consider 446 million citizens in the EU, 27 member states, I think it's 1.4 billion people in China. When you think of all the issues that are on the table, this is a major summit. And then at the end of the event, the 2 presidents only take 11 minutes of questions from 3 journalists. I mean, if the same thing happened in the United States, Donald Trump took 5.5 minutes of questions after a major summit, he would be ridiculed in the media. And so I'm just wondering, you know, is it the case that President von der Leyen is afraid to take questions on China? Is it that she's being advised not to take questions on China? Or is it the case that she had to go to some major urgent event that was more important? And if so, what was the event?
Thank you for your question. As you say, the press conference was an event which was organized in the European Council, but it had, of course, been discussed with us. As you know, there was no joint press conference with the Chinese authorities. If the president had not wanted to take questions on China, she would not have taken part in the press conference at all. Both presidents were very happy to be able not only to host the summit and take part in the summit, but also to share with you their views related to the discussions. And in a press conference, you have both statements, which I believe are very informative, and also a number of questions. Now, As spokesperson for the Commission, I know from experience that sometimes press conferences could last for an hour and a half or 2 hours if you were to take all the questions that come from journalists. I understand that you would have wanted for more time, but I believe that the press conference nevertheless gave you very good insights into the issues that were raised, and that both presidents fielded very important questions on sensitive topics, and therefore that the press conference played its role. But of course, we're always happy to learn from experience. Thank you. Let's continue. Catherine, is it a question on external affairs?
Yes, it is.
Good morning.
It is, Eric. Good morning. Hi. Eric, in a statement following the summit yesterday, there was only a very passing reference to the deteriorating human rights situation in Xinjiang and the continuing situation with Tibet, of course. And the only requirement I seem to see in the statement is that China should resume a human rights dialogue later in the year. I mean, this doesn't really seem to reflect the level of repression that we're seeing of the Uyghur people and other Muslim minorities in China. I mean, mass incarceration, pervasive surveillance, torture, forced sterilization, extrajudicial killings. Do you not think that that merits something more than a requirement to restart a human rights dialogue?
Well, what I can say about the summit and the statement yesterday, Catherine, is that the exchanges with the Chinese leadership were extensive and very candid. And this is reflected in the way it was reported to you. Now, you need to remember that the relationship with China is one which spans a large number of policy areas, and therefore the issues that have to be discussed during the summit and that have to be reported on after the summit are also very, very extensive. And obviously, both presidents tried to give you a balanced account of the discussions which took place with the Chinese leadership. But human rights, both individual cases and general cases, general issues, were raised with the Chinese leadership, and we believe that this was the right approach to take, and that the statements which were made after the summit itself reflected well the candid approach that we took to the discussions with the Chinese leadership. Let me move now to Ansgar.
Hello, Ansgar from the German press agency. Eric, a quick question. Apparently, Ursula von der Leyen told the chairman of the political groups in the EP that the next physical European Council will be organized on the 17th July. Can you confirm this information? Thank you.
I was not at the meeting, but more importantly, I think that it is a question that you should address to the President of the European Council, as it is his prerogative to set the date of the European Council meetings, be they physical or virtual. Obviously, the European Commission stands ready to support the President of the European Council in his efforts to gather the leaders and to come to a successful outcome on Next Generation EU and the next MFF. And we expect, of course, that such a physical meeting will take place in the course of July, but it is for the President of the European Council to confirm the exact date. I believe you have single-handedly closed the chapter on external affairs, so let me thank Peter and Virginie, and now move to Tommaso.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for the floor. Tommaso Gallavotti in Kronos, Italy. It's just a question, if I may, because the Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte, after 10 days of the so-called Stati Generali in Italy, came up with a proposal to cut VAT in Italy. I just wonder if the Commission thinks that such an idea might help to bring about a compromise on the recovery plan or not. Thank you.
I'm not sure whether we are aware of these statements, and as you know, we never comment in any case on announcements, but on facts. I think that the discussion on Next Generation EU is one which includes many different parameters, and it is the alignment of these different parameters which will allow us ultimately to reach a deal. But I'm afraid that I cannot comment more on this issue than that. So I now have David. David, tu as la parole.
Oui, merci Eric. David Carretta, Radio Radicale. C'est une question sur le transport aérien. Le gouvernement français a annoncé hier un décret lié aux aides à Air France avec lequel il veut limiter la possibilité des compagnies low cost d'opérer entre villes françaises pour qu'ils ne prennent pas les routes d'Air France. Je voulais savoir, cela motivé avec des raisons écologiques, je voulais savoir si ça c'est compatible avec les règles du marché intérieur. Merci.
Merci David. Je passe la parole à Stéphane.
Merci beaucoup David pour cette question et pour ton message ce matin. Tu sais que dans le cadre de notre Green Deal justement, notre système de transport doit réduire considérablement ses émissions pour contribuer à nos objectifs de neutralité climatique. Dans ce contexte, justement, nous comprenons que certains États membres envisagent la possibilité de prendre des mesures pour y parvenir, entre autres dans le cadre des mesures que les États membres prennent pour soutenir le redressement du secteur de l'aviation suivant la pandémie Covid-19. Justement, au niveau européen, dans le cadre de la législation européenne, il y a un règlement qui permet aux États membres de limiter, voire d'interdire des vols en cas de sérieux problèmes environnementaux, surtout et en particulier lorsqu'il y a d'autres modes de transport qui existent, des alternatives de transport. Mais c'est une possibilité qui vient avec une série de conditions importantes. Par exemple, le fait que ces mesures doivent être non discriminatoires et proportionnées à l'objectif poursuivi. Ces mesures ne peuvent pas fausser la concurrence entre plutôt les transporteurs aériens et ces mesures ne peuvent pas excéder 3 ans. Nous sommes maintenant justement en contact avec les autorités françaises pour évaluer les mesures annoncées par le gouvernement français, pour nous justement, dans le but de nous assurer que toute mesure prise soit compatible avec cette législation européenne. Merci.
Merci Stéphane. Y a-t-il d'autres questions pour Stéphane sur les thématiques transport? Ok. Tommaso.
Yes, good morning. Apologies for insisting. It's always on transport. It's on transport actually, because airlines all over Europe and also in Italy persist in predatory behavior towards consumers. They sell airline tickets, canceling the flights just afterwards. And in Italy, for example, Alitalia is selling tickets for flights starting from Linate Airport, which is closed, and it will be closed for months. Does the Commission has anything to say about this? Because it's a predatory behavior which continues. It replicates itself. Thank you.
Well, I think it's very clear that all airline companies have to follow the legislation in place, legislation which is in place in the member states, but also legislation which is in place with regard to, for instance, protection of passenger rights. when we have situations where passenger rights are not respected, then obviously member states have to intervene, and the Commission keeps a very close eye on that. I cannot pronounce myself on the specific case of Alitalia offering tickets from the airport of Lineate. I can only say that the legislation in the area of transport, in the area of aviation, obviously needs to be followed, and that's clear for the Commission, definitely.
Thank you. Other questions on transport? Yanis.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Yanis.
Yes, go ahead, Dennis.
On transport.
I wanted
On
to
transport.
ask, I wanted to ask where we are on the creation of the safe third country list, which is supposed to be in place before July the 1st. My understanding is there was a discussion yesterday at COREPER, but there wasn't even talk of specific countries, so there's a long way to go to reach a list of common understanding and very few days left. So any light you can shed on that will be very welcome. Thanks.
Yanis, I understand that you could think that this is a question related to transport, but actually it's on borders, external borders of the EU and restrictions to enter the EU. So we note your question. We'll come back to that, but I think that Athanasios had a question on transport. Is that correct, Athanasios?
That's correct. That's correct. It's on transport, and it's a follow-up to the question of my colleague concerning Linate Airport and the cases of these predatory behaviors. The thing is that we're not in the first week and we're not in the first month of this whole case.
We've lost you, Athanasios.
Not for 2 months. Okay, so I'm back.
Go ahead.
I'll start again and I'll rephrase the whole thing. I'm just saying that these predatory behaviors are not here for just a week or a month or just a few days. They are in place for the whole duration of this crisis. And it's more than obvious that member states do not intend to do anything about it. This is the case. You can check with any online site from any air carrier in Europe, and you can see that there are many, many cases of flights that cannot be operated. So I will insist, what are you going to do now about the member states that do not impose the legislation that is in place for consumer protection in the field of transport for these specific airlines?
Stefan.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, as I said before, it's up to the member states to respect the legislation which is applicable in this area. Member states have also enforcement authorities and enforcement bodies which are there to do the enforcement of this legislation. You know that some time ago the Commission, which takes this legislation obviously very seriously, has sent letters to member states also in the area of passenger rights protection. So the Commission is definitely closely following the way legislation is being followed. We are monitoring this, and I can only say that if there are issues where we believe that there is a clear non-respect of the applicable rules, the Commission will obviously take the necessary steps to straighten that out.
Follow up, please.
Go ahead, Athanasios.
Are there any? Did you identify such cases, as you mentioned?
We have, as I just said before, we have sent letters to member states. We have received input from member states on the way on how they see that legislation is being respected and or implemented. We are assessing this, and when we think steps have to be taken, we will take the steps. But I cannot go into the details of any specific issues at this stage.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm afraid we will not be able to say more than this on the issue for the moment. Now, Yanis, I know that you had a question on borders, so we will go to you. And then, Oliver, I know you've been asking for the floor for some time. We'll come to you afterwards. Adalbert.
Hello, Yanis, and thank you very much for this question. Maybe just to specify from a purely terminological perspective that we're not talking here much about safe third countries, which is a very specific concept relating to asylum policy, but about lifting the travel restriction into the EU. And on the process for that, maybe I can recall that we proposed on the 11th of June a number of criteria as well as a coordination mechanism to assist member states in agreeing on a common list of countries. Now, this process as well as the content are very much in the hands of the member states. This is happening in the Council, and the role of the Commission is to facilitate and to help this discussion. Which frankly is a full-time job, but it is not, we are not the masters of this process. Discussions are happening very intensively. There were first preparatory discussions that the Commission facilitated in our video conferences with the border authorities on the 11th, on the 15th of June, and since then it has moved very firmly to the Council with meetings under the Integrated Political Crisis Response mechanism on the 16th and 19th of June, COREPER meetings on the 17th and 22nd of June, and another COREPER meeting taking place tomorrow. So these discussions are very much in progress, and I would maybe suggest that if you need up-to-date information on that, you check with the Council Presidency and or the Council Press Service, but from our side, we are just continuing to support this process in order for member states to be able to take these decisions as soon as possible.
Thank you, Adalbert. Oliver, you now have the floor.
Hello.
Hi.
Do you hear me?
Yes, I think it's the first time we take a question from you on camera. Go ahead.
Yeah, because it's the first time I'm actually wearing gloves while I'm following these online. I have questions concerning the, what is it called? The Coronavirus Response Investment Initiative. You know, these 37 billion euros in, I think, unused cohesion funds you proposed 3.5 months ago. And the idea was, I think, that this should be quickly dispersed money that could be quickly used in order to fight against the immediate consequences of the recession and so forth. Do you know how much of the money has already actually received recipients? How much of these 37 billion has already been spent? And then I have a sort of related question to the recovery fund, but I can ask it afterwards if you want, or now, whatever you prefer.
No, we will take your question first on on CRI, disbursements of CRI funds. Vivian.
Thanks a lot. Hi, Oliver. Indeed, we are happy that this Corona Response Investment Initiative is well underway, and the cooperation with the Commission and the Member States is very intense, so making sure that these funds are dispersed as soon as possible. When it comes to the exact figures, I will have to get back to you.
Okay.
Yeah. Second question, Oliver.
Second question. There has been some criticism amongst member states, but also amongst researchers concerning the fact that about, I think, 2/3 of the money that you propose in the recovery fund will only be dispersed by 2023. So it's going to take quite some time until the money actually reaches, regions and companies and so forth. And we all hope that by 2023 the recession is actually already over. What do you make of the criticism that the money is actually not coming quickly enough? And is there anything that could be done about it? Or is the fact that it goes through the usual budgeting procedures of the EU simply means it takes time because you need projects and you need to make sure that it's properly planned and controlled and so forth?
Oliver, can I ask you for a specification, because the recovery fund is not really a concept that we are using. Are you speaking about the overall...
whatever the 750 billion.
Okay, next generation EU.
Put forward. Voilà.
So Next Generation EU, the whole program basically.
Yes.
The whole package. I'm not aware that we have actually defined a timeline, but let me see if Balázs can provide you with information more specifically on the timeline.
Well, yes and no. To be very frank, I've not been confronted with this assessment, and the message that we've been passing in the past weeks is clearly that we would like the money to be available as soon as possible. So saying that the majority would be available from 2023 2024 is not something I can concur with. In fact, we are trying to make funds available already from January 2021 onwards, and you know that in the context of the bridging solution, we've also proposed a amendment to the 2020 budget, which will make available 11.5 billion euro already this year.
Thank you, Balázs. I think that at this point in time, Oliver, we are, in the middle of, or rather at the beginning of the negotiations on Next Generation EU as a whole, and therefore we should be careful with the assessments that are made as to what will actually be the disbursement pattern on the ground. We have to raise the money as well. Member states have to present plans for certain of the programs that will be financed by Next Generation EU, for example, in the context of the recovery and resilience facility that we are providing. So there will certainly be different schedules, if I can put it this way, for the disbursement of the funds. You have a follow-up?
Yeah, please. Sorry, maybe I didn't make myself understood well enough. I mean the actual disbursement, and I mean, for example, the paper published by Zsolt Darvas of Bruegel 2 weeks ago, where he shows, based on the Commission's proposal, that about 75% of the funds will only start being dispersed to the recipients by 2023. And I've seen calculations by at least one member state that come to the very same results. I've reported about it. Many of my colleagues have reported about it. So I'm not talking about making the money available in terms of here's the chunk of money and you can now start sort of, planning projects and so forth. I'm talking about when is the money on recipients' bank accounts. Thank you.
Okay. Well, two things. First of all, we're not really in the business of commenting on academic papers that are drafted, as you know, because there are many such papers. It's very difficult for us to react to everything which is out there. But secondly, let me remind you, and I think this is much more important. Next Generation EU is one part of the answer of the EU and of member states to the crisis. Let us not forget that as soon as the crisis erupted, the European Union took a certain number of very important decisions that enabled member states to deal with the immediate consequences of the crisis. And this is in particular the decision on a temporary state aid framework, and the rules related to the Stability and Growth Pact, which we flexibilized and which allowed for member states to, the term escapes me now, but it will come back, that allowed member states to immediately use fiscal tools fiscal spending in order to support the economy. So there has been, on the one hand, an immediate response from the European Union, which has allowed to deal with the immediate consequences of the crisis. There is in the plan by the Eurogroup, the 540 billion, which the Eurogroup has agreed upon, which also involve, therefore, money which is available to member states and to companies and also to people who are at the risk of being put in part-time employment through the SURE program in order to support them. And then there is Next Generation EU, which will help us continue to deal with the consequences of the crisis and prepare for the relaunch and support the relaunching of the European economy. Now, I'm sure that you have reported on this as well, but just opening the paper this morning, I was looking at the projections for economic activity in a whole series of industrial sectors across the European Union. And you can see that for many sectors, it is expected that the impact of the crisis is going to last for a certain number of years, right? Not just in 2021 or 2020, 2021, but also beyond that, before they come back to the pre-crisis level of activity. And therefore, it seems to me that to have an approach that provides funding for the immediate emergency needs, then to go through, if you wish, the valley of lack of activity and consequences of this immediate crisis, and then helps us rebuild the economy and restart on a new basis, actually makes perfect sense. So whether we should be focused so much on whether the money from Next Generation EU will be there in time because it will be dispersed in 2023, when you already have trillions of euros available for the economy at the moment, is really a question which is open to debate. So I hope this provides you with a different perspective on the issue. And the term now is back in my mind, thanks to my colleagues. It was the activation of the general escape clause in the Stability and Growth Pact. Thank you. Memory sometimes is a tricky thing. Okay, let us now move to Gierakina. Sorry. Gierakina, you have the floor. Press speak.
Okay, you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I have to get back to the border issue. I was waiting on a queue about that. It's for Adalbert. On June 11th, European Commission recommended to member states to open external borders towards Western Balkans, having in mind the situation was similar or even better than in member states of EU. Does the Commission stand behind this recommendation, having in mind that the numbers in the region have been worsened now? Thank you.
Thank you. The recommendation to lift the travel restriction with regards to the Western Balkan region was not only related to epidemiological considerations, but also the close level of integration that the region has with the EU, and in general our relations with the region, as was also explained in detail in the recommendation that we put out on the 11th of June. Now, with regards to the epidemiological situation, of course, we remain in, we follow the situation very closely, and the decision now that will be taken by the 1st of, that is meant to be taken by the member states by the 1st of July, will also need to take into account all of the most recent epidemiological data. But as I said, these discussions are currently happening in the Council and are in the hands of the member states. So watch this space.
Thank you. Now, let's see if there are other questions for Adalbert, since he is back on the podium. David, you have your hand raised. Is it for Adalbert?
Merci, merci Eric. J'avais déjà soulevé la main avant, mais j'ai l'occasion de... C'est une question par rapport à une question qui est posée hier, l'article de Spiegel et Balkan Inside, lequel la Commission a attribué un contrat à une consultancy américaine sur la question migratoire, ou EASO plutôt, a attribué ce contrat après que cette consultancy a fait un travail pour la Commission sur la crise grecque. Donc je voulais savoir si tu peux partager ce que tu as découvert après la question qu'on t'a posée hier. Merci.
David, est-ce que je pourrais te demander d'être un peu plus spécifique dans dans ta question. Enfin, je pourrais donner évidemment quelques éléments généraux sur cette question, mais c'est plus simple si tu as une question spécifique.
Surtout, on a assez mal entendu ta question.
Oui, mais
on percevait mal.
J'espère que le gouvernement belge va utiliser le Recovery Fund pour améliorer la connexion des personnes qui travaillent depuis la maison. Cela dit, la question, c'est par rapport à McKinsey et le rôle qu'il a joué pendant la crise migratoire en Grèce 2015-2016. Vu que hier tu avais annoncé que tu aurais donné des détails majeurs par rapport aux révélations qui ont été publiées par Der Spiegel et Balkan Insight, je voulais savoir si tu peux les partager avec tout le monde, c'est-à-dire par exemple, est-ce que la Commission est en train de regarder ce qui s'est passé, vu qu'un des fonctionnaires qui ont géré tout ça actuellement est représentant de la Commission en Vienne, un autre est devenu DG à ECFIN. Donc voilà, est-ce que vous êtes en train de regarder de plus près à tout ça et est-ce que vous allez prendre des initiatives pour nous expliquer comment ça se fait que une consultancy américaine a décidé la politique migratoire de la Commission?
Donc peut-être tout d'abord une clarification sur ce que j'ai dit hier. Je n'ai pas dit qu'on allait faire une enquête approfondie pour répondre spécifiquement aux questions qui ont été soulevées dans l'article que Bart a donc mentionné hier. Tout ce que j'ai dit, c'est que j'ai avoué ma propre ignorance de ces questions pour l'instant, puisque les questions soulevées dans l'article se rapportaient à des faits qui précèdent notre mandat et qu'il nous fallait un peu plus de temps pour approfondir cette question, pour donner une réponse circonstanciée. Il s'agit en effet de faits ou d'allégations qui concernent les années 2016-2017, donc quelque chose qui date maintenant d'il y a un bon moment, et ce sont des questions dont nous nous sommes occupés à cette époque-là, mais il me fallait un peu plus de temps pour me replonger dans les vieux dossiers. Alors je ne reconnais pas non plus exactement les allégations que tu répètes, notamment par rapport aux fonctionnaires de la Commission. Alors si tu me le permets, je préférerais terminer encore ce travail d'approfondissement. Il me faudrait encore quelques heures pour le faire, et je reviendrai vers toi avec les détails. Ceci dit, je pense que juste une précision qui me semble importante. Je ne pense pas qu'on puisse dire qu'une entreprise externe a décidé la politique migratoire de la Commission européenne. De manière générale, lorsque la Commission travaille avec des partenaires externes, leur contribution est toujours prise en compte par la Commission de la manière la plus appropriée, sous la responsabilité politique de la Commission. La Commission garde ses responsabilités, la discrétion que les traités lui confèrent, et le contrôle entier sur les propositions des politiques que la Commission met sur la table. Donc il est très très clair que la responsabilité pour les politiques publiques, y compris les politiques particulièrement sensibles telles que la gestion des migrations, reste toujours avec les autorités publiques nationales ou européennes selon le cas.
Merci. Un mot de mise en garde. Je ne prendrai pas Adalbert à la lettre quand il a dit quelques heures. Il reviendra vers toi quand il aura pu rassembler les informations nécessaires, que cela prenne quelques heures ou plus de temps. Voilà. Merci. Je ne vois pas d'autres mains levées pour nous aujourd'hui. Non, donc je vous souhaite un bon appétit et nous nous verrons demain pour le compte-rendu du collège. Merci beaucoup.